So we knew it was a matter of time before you, attendees, would see the ball pits in the lobby and be like, hey, I got to do more than just look at them, okay? And it's cool. We knew this. We were excited about it. And we wanted to see if there would just be some little things that would happen along the way that would be worth catching on video. Yeah, it's like candid camera. Now you're starting to get sweaty right here. It's like, oh boy, what are they catching? It wasn't big, we didn't have anything. It's just kind of funny to kind of watch some of the footage like this. They're playing, they're like, hey, let's throw balls at each other. Get in the ball pit. Yeah, oh wait, the friend is like, help, 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 help. My favorite part is watching our staff member right here. Look at this. He comes into the scene right about now and he looks at them like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you 12? Yes, I would have done the same thing, all right? Here's another shot that we have. This is one of our dream team members. Ken is standing at the door greeting, and he's like, hey, Ken, and he goes away. And so here's what I want you to do. We're just going to watch again, just a little bit of slow-mo, because he's like, hey, Ken, I'm falling in the ball pit. Ah! And then he does something with his right hand. He kind of licks it off. Now, let's slow this thing down. Look at the environment around the ball pit. See if some things start to show up that weren't, hey, Ken, way to go. I got coffee in my hand, and now we've got some coffee on the floor. We got some coffee on the ball pit. We got some coffee on the sign. I mean, we got issues now, It's like, thanks a lot. That's great, This is the kind of the way life goes. Life is an adventure. We're excited about it. It's a ball pit of opportunity, and we have dreams and hopes. And then what happens? People come along and make a mess of it. People come along and create unnecessary or unwanted work, the drama in our life. And so that's why I think you all elevated relational issues as something that you want to talk about, whether it's a marriage. We call that drama in our household heated fellowship, okay? It just sounds better than saying we're having an argument or a fight. My kid's like, are you fighting? No, we're having heated fellowship, okay? You go into the other room and watch episodes of, your favorite show, right? When you're fighting with your family, it's like Family Feud, emphasis on the feud. It's not so much of a game anymore. It's kind of traumatic at times. And then at work, you have drama at work. It's kind of like Survivor. It's like, whose tribe are you going to be with this week? It's like drama follows us everywhere. And so wherever you're at, if you have drama, big or small, I am so excited that you are here because I'm going to share with you some things that I don't always do perfect, okay? We're at church. I'm being honest, all right? Let's get real talk. But this has been framework that Jesus has actually taught us, that has been invested into my life, that has dramatically increased my ability to navigate. In other words, it's helped me have less ongoing drama in my life, and I think it's going to be helpful for you. And for those of you that feel like you do the drama thing really well, I think this will be a framework that you can use to help other people that God has put in your life. You see, I think that's the way it works. You either need to take a step today or you're going to help someone else take a step in their journey. And so, before we get into it, because I know some of you had some heated fellowship in the car ride in today, let's just take a deep breath and let's invite God. Let's open our hearts. Let's set aside distractions to receive what we're about to hear together. Will you do that while I pray? God, thanks. Thanks for the incredible opportunity to learn alongside of these incredible people. God, the truth is, drama in our life, man, it can feel like we've lost. It can feel dramatic. And so, God, would you help us set aside some of the emotion that comes with this? Not because the emotion isn't valid, but because sometimes our emotions can get in the way of what you want us to receive. Use me in any way that you can over the next few minutes. And God, would you help teach us how to navigate drama the way that you did with us. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks so much for being here. Whatever campus you're at, whatever device you're watching us on, if you're watching us later on in the week, if all of you here at Perrysburg could just do me a favor and welcome all of our campuses and those watching online with your hands. Just say, hey, welcome. I have said this every week, but it is a privilege to be a part of a community that takes time to go, hey, how can we get better? I mean, God, what is it that you want to invest in our lives so that we're better dads and we're better leaders and we're better neighbors and we're better family members, we're better kids all the way around? And so today we're going to talk about this drama issue, and I have hopefully some helpful indicators that you can pay attention to in your life. You know you have drama when you start to avoid people, okay? So when you go to work on Monday and you decide, you look over and you're like, oh, I'm going to take the long way around the cubicles to get to my office or wherever I'm at. That's called avoiding, my friends. That's avoiding, because whoever it is that's on the shortcut, you don't want to run the risk of having a face-to-face with them. How many of you, show of hands at our campus, have you ever faked a phone call? Oh, you're already avoiding. You're confessing this is great. It doesn't feel good. It's cathartic, isn't it? It's like, yeah, somewhere he said raise my hand. That's good. If you've ever faked a phone call, it's like you're in the store and it's like, you know what, I'm just to avoid this situation, I'm going to be like right here. And it's like, I didn't see you because I'm really busy right now. You know, that may mean you have a drama issue, okay? Just saying, and that's all right. We're going to get to that in a minute. Here's another indicator that you may have a drama issue. You keep score. You know, some of you are like, oh yeah, I know that person. Some of you are like, I am that person. This would be an indicator. Early on in your childhood, you would tally up the number of gifts your siblings got at Christmas. Yeah, how many of you did that? Yeah, me too, right? You're playing the prices right in your head. You're like, that was $100, and I'm pretty sure I'm looking at 75 here. I think my parents love them more. You know, that's called keeping score. What this looks like in our relationships today is it's like when you're feeling a little drama, you start building your case in your head. Oh, if she brings that up, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say this, and I'm going to tell her what about that, and I got this, and you know, that one time. That's keeping score, okay? So that may mean you have a drama issue. Here's another one, and I think this one's obvious. I think we know this, but it's gossip. It's when you talk about the drama instead of talking to the drama, to the person that's creating the drama in your life. And man, we love this. We just look at social media. Did you see what she's wearing? Can you believe they said that? I mean, social media is like gossip central. We think just because we're saying it out in public, it's okay. No, I mean, that's an indicator that you may have a drama issue. In fact, I should probably do a whole talk on how to navigate social media in a way that's not a dumpster fire all the time. You know, it's like people are jumping off of this thing. It's crazy. Anyway, so I'll spend the rest of our time talking about that, and we don't need to. Christians even do this. We call it prayer requests. You know, it's like, hey, we need to pray for Ben. Why? Haven't you heard? It's like, no, what happened? And you go into the long story. Well, the other day, and he went, they said, and all of a sudden, it was like, and then this happened. And then, and if you're lucky, you actually get around to praying about it. Some people try to fit it into their prayer. And it's like, God, you just need to help Ben because he's got issues. He's got this issue, and he's got that issue. And you're saying it out loud to a group. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, man. Some of our friendships are even built around gossip. It's like we have common enemy friendship. You know, the reason we talk to each other is so we could talk about our ex, or we could talk about our boss. Or we're not even really friends. We just are like gossip buddies. So that may be an indicator that you have some drama. And here's another one. This is thanks to social media. You start creeping. Yeah, you know, those of you that have the flip phone, you're like, I don't have this one. Good for you, you know, because when you're on social media and you're like, oh, do you see the outfit that she's wearing? Can you believe that? And you're using creeping on their social media page to validate how you feel about them. That could mean you have a drama issue. And ultimately, where drama issues lead, and this is where it really starts to get personal, is distrust. It's when you're still in a relationship, but you're not sure where they're spending the money, or you're not sure where they're spending their time when they're not with you, or you're not sure that what they're saying to you is actually what's happening in their life. And when we get here, that's when the drama becomes even more difficult and oftentimes takes more than just a simple step to solve. And I think ultimately what we're going to talk about today is meant to help us avoid this step. But it means we got to learn how to step into the issue, because what are we tempted to do? I mean, I would say for the dudes in the audience, myself included, you know what we're tempted to do? We just watch football and golf and go shoot things. You know, it's like, essentially, we pretend that the drama doesn't exist. It's like, you know what? I'd rather ignore it because, shoot, I don't even want to get involved. I don't need any more drama in my life. And so we ignore it, and we hope that it gets better. And, you know, what do women do? And I'm being a little stereotypical here. What do you do? From my perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, it's like you watch The Bachelor. It's like, you know what? I'm looking at their drama, and I'm like, I'm glad I don't have that drama. Suddenly, I feel a whole lot better about mine, you know? And so it's like we watch other things to feel better about it. Whatever your strategy is, the theme that we've been talking about every week when it comes to the issues in our life is this: identifying the real issue, which seems obvious because we think they're the real issue, but it's not so obvious, as you'll see in a minute. Identifying the real issue is the fastest way towards real solutions in our life. And as I was thinking about the drama in our life, unlike other problems that we have in strategy and workplace, strategy and things like problems in our house or whatever, and I know some of that can create drama, but the issue that we want less drama around the real issue is this, and you can write this in your notes. We don't know what to do with the separation that drama creates. To me, that's the real issue. We use words like, I just feel disconnected. I don't feel like we're connecting. You feel distant. Have you ever heard that before? You feel distant. We talk about that. It feels awkward. We don't even really know how to describe the gap, the space that seems like it's not able to ever come around again. And so our temptation is to do nothing because we think that the pain here of not doing anything is better than the pain there of trying to address the separation. And so, and I would say dudes in particular, we're known for this. And sometimes it's wise to wait because when we react now, we only have more drama later. When you go in and you're like, I'm just going to talk about how I'm feeling right now and all of these emotions and state, it feels kind of like a drive-by shooting. And suddenly you're like, where did that come from? There's bullet holes everywhere. And I was just eating popcorn, watching the football game. What happened? So the real solution is so simple, but yet it takes an incredible amount of courage. The real solution is this. It's to have a real conversation about the real issue. I know, you could have taught this. You know this. And what's amazing is in 2 sentences, Jesus gives us such practical truths to help us do this better. Because what we think a real conversation is, it doesn't always help the drama in our life. In fact, oftentimes it can become a dangerous drama conversation. And so let's look at what Jesus taught us here. He says, if another believer, put another person in there, if another person sins against you, this is really written for how the church should handle disputes. But put people that are in close proximity. If another believer sins against you, go privately, point out the offense, and if the other person listens and confesses it, you've won that person back. 2 sentences. Super simple, right? Right out of the gate, here's what we need to take in. You're one of 2 people when it comes to the drama in your life. You're either the one who has been sinned against, something has happened against you, or you're the other person. And at some point in your life, you're going to be either of them. Some of you are one of them right now, okay? So here's the other thing that Jesus teaches us out of this, is that it involves this word sin. You see, I think the root of all drama in our life is sin. And some of you are like, whoa, Snyder, slow down, okay? Get off your holy horse. I didn't come to church. Because for some people today, going to church and hearing about sinner makes people feel less than. And there's some potential spiritual truth to that, but it's like people start to turn off their brain. And so I want you to set that aside for a minute, and let's just look at the literal definition of sin. The literal definition of sin is to miss the mark. It's to miss the mark. In archery, if you had a bullseye, to not hit it is sin. That's what would be called out. You miss the mark. And so here's what that means. When you miss the mark, sin causes separation. Naturally. And so with God, when we sin and we're not perfect with God, we are separated from Him. We have this space that somehow we are out of relationship. We are out of connection with Him. And the same is true in our relationship with each other. Fundamentally, it's sin that keeps us separated there, and we experience this within ourselves. Think about it. You have an exercise goal. You have a career goal. You have a dietary goal. And you have a bullseye that you want to hit. And when you don't hit that, you experience some of the emotion that comes with sin. And so the root of all of our drama leaves us feeling some consistent feelings that will help us have better conversations. The root of drama, when you are guilty, when you feel guilt, it's because you are at fault. You know that you have missed the mark. You didn't do what you said you were going to do to yourself. And sometimes we experience faults in our relationship. And obviously the Bible talks about some of the sin, the fault, the guilt that separates us from God. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Another byproduct of sin that isn't always your fault is this one. It's hurt. And hurts are when we bring feelings into the dialogue. Sometimes they go together, but sometimes the other person didn't do anything necessarily wrong. That's where we get caught up in the word sin. But the way in which they did it hurt us. And so that's a root cause of some of the drama in our life. And believe it or not, unresolved guilt and hurt leaves us feeling this, shame. And shame is the root cause of some of our drama. And sometimes our shame has little to do with the person that we're mad at. Think about that. We get mad at people, but the real issue is we've been carrying around this shame, this ball pit of shame with us that could go all the way back to the way somebody talked to you, mistreated you and your child. It could be this trauma that you've been carrying with you. And so that's why, if we're going to get better at dealing with the drama in our life, before you ever confront someone, if you're taking notes, the first thing that we need to do is we need to identify the real issue. We need to identify the real issue. Look at what Jesus says. He says, if another believer sins against you. He didn't say if another believer sins out there. This is an offense against you. What is the real issue against you? Asking that question when we are in the midst of feeling separation, of feeling that drama come up. Asking, hey, what's the real issue here is so important. And the problem is we don't really think about it. We sense that this is happening. We feel the disconnect, but we try to just get over it and pretend that it'll get better. We don't want to make that big of a deal out of it, and so we put it behind us and we never really think, what is the real issue? And you know what's so helpful is in that moment, you can ask the question, what did they do wrong, really? What are they at fault? Is this a guilt thing that I feel like they are guilty of? Or is this a hurt thing that maybe they didn't do anything wrong, but maybe it's just the way that they made me feel in the moment? Is this a shame thing? Is this really about me or something that's happened to me in my past that I'm now bringing to this situation? Taking a little bit of time to ask those questions is so helpful in helping our real conversations around the real issue. But our temptation is to ignore it, it's to forget it, it's to try to do life without it. Meanwhile, our life goes on with this issue rattling around. And we would like to think that, you know what, real people get over this stuff. No, real people deal with real issues by asking what's the real issue and getting some clarity there. And instead, it just kind of sits there and it simmers in our life. And you know what happens? As time goes on, this issue becomes harder and harder to see. When we look at our life, we're like, yeah, you know, there's a lot going on, and sometimes we even assume that we are over that because when you look at it here, you can't see the issue anymore. But under the surface of our life, yep, there it is, still simmering away, left unaddressed and undealt with until you come home from work and she said, or he didn't, or your boss does this, or suddenly there's this one exchange, and what was seemed to be okay, it was a non-issue, it's like, oh, welcome to Cedar Creek. Is it your first time? No, it's not. Okay, good. Did you get hurt? Do we have issues? Do we need to talk about it? Okay, we're okay, good. You can see me afterwards, all right? You know, it's like, whoa, where did that come from? I didn't see that coming. Sometimes we say that about ourselves. So one of the best things that we can do is just, and I'm not saying you have to take a week. You don't have to go to a monastery. Just take a little time to identify the real issue when you start to sense that separation. Deal with it quickly. Address it quickly. Understand it in the moment, not 40 months later, because it'll wreck your life. And here's what that means for some of you. Some of you have been simmering on some issues for so long that you can't even put words to it. One person in the lobby told me it's like a spider web of issues. And so what that typically requires, if you find yourself there, you may need to get help. You may need to sit down with someone and begin untangling the web of issues that you've been carrying for so long. This is why group life is so valuable. Because you get a community of people, and not in your first group setting, not in your second, but as you begin to spend time with people and take off the mask, They can help you see what's really going on under the surface. And you know what else? God would love to help you with this. There's a powerful verse. Well, let me say this before I do that. Failure to identify the real issue almost always guarantees failure to find a resolution. You see, when we don't take time to identify what the real issue is, you go into these conversations thinking you know what it is, and we end up saying a whole lot of words and bringing a whole lot of emotion and very little resolution. So if that's been your experience, maybe it may involve the other person. We'll talk about that in a minute. But maybe the work that you missed out on was taking time to go, what's the real issue here? God wants to help. In Psalm 139, it says, search me, O God. I love this. This is a great prayer to pray. Psalm 139. Verses 23 and 24, it says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. God, where am I dealing with fear? Point out anything in me that offends you. Is there any guilt? Did I have a part to play in this? And if not, or either way, God, lead me to the path of everlasting life. Lead me towards relationship the way that you designed them. You see, drama doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Drama is an invitation to take a strengthening step together with someone that you're doing life with. And so before you confront someone, make sure that you identify the real issue. For those of you that are around the balls, if you want to take one of those home as a souvenir, there you go. That's a little thank you for letting me drop those on you. Now, the second step is this. Before you confront someone, this is the second thing you need to do. Prepare them for the conversation. You need to prepare them for the conversation. What do you mean? You actually need to give them a heads up that you want to talk, okay? Because our temptation is to just come marching right into the kitchen while they're cooking dinner. You know, it's like marching right into their office, and I'm going to give you a piece of my mind because I've been bottling this up for so long. No, time out. Look at what Jesus says. He says this. If another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. Well, I did go privately. I went right into his office. No. If you're going to go privately, it means face to face. It means you have to set those sorts of meetings up. Hey, we need to talk. Did your dad ever tell you that? It's like, hey, son, we need to talk. And the Mufasa shiver kind of comes up your spine. Yeah. There was somebody who was helping my wife and I navigate our heated fellowship. And they said, hey, when you feel like you're having some drama, use a word that you both understand. And the word that he suggested was, I need to set an appointment. Now, you can laugh at that. It sounds like maybe you're going to the doctor's office or whatever. But the truth is, you need common language so that when one person says, hey, I really need to set an appointment, the other person has a general idea that this isn't going to be like throwing football in the backyard conversation. It also means that you need to set up a time and space where you're going to be able to have a private face-to-face. Prepare them for the conversation. And here's a key. Trying to do this on Facebook is foolish. Okay? I'm just going to say it because for some people, they're like, it'll just be so much easier if I handle it now. You really hurt my feelings, expletive, the other day. You know what I mean? It's like that's not effective. In fact, the grid that I use is as the intensity increases, as the emotional intensity increases, my proximity should increase as well. If it's going to be emotionally sensitive or intense, that means the more we need to take this offline. Potentially the 4 best words you could ever use in email, text, or social media. It's like, hey, let's take this conversation offline. This is going in a direction that's increasing the drama, and we're not really understanding each other. Take it offline and meet face to face. Prepare them for the conversation so that when you do, before you confront someone, you've got to desire the real win. If you don't desire the real win, I'll talk about what that is in a minute. You're not ready for the conversation. And so here's what Jesus says. He says this, if another believer, I know I'm going back to the same verse. It's amazing how this is packed with so many principles. If another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. And if the other person listens and confesses it, that's what we think is the real win. Oh, if I just get them to hear every word that I say and understand. No, the real win is that you have won that person back. It's that you've closed the separation. That's the win. Too many times we think that the win is that I get it off my chest. We think that the win is that they hear everything that I've said. We think that the win, sometimes, if I'm being honest, we think that the win is that I've put them in their place. And all that does is it keeps the drama going. The real win, you've got to want the relationship restored. And so don't have the conversation if that's not the win that you're chasing, okay? It's not going to help. And so once we're there, once we have identified the real issue and we've prepared them for the conversation and we desire the real win, before you have the confrontation, you also need to explain your perspective. Like before? Yes, before. Look at what Jesus says. He says this: if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. He didn't say point out all of the issues or problems or concerns that you're having. It doesn't say point out all of the emotions that you're feeling all of the time. It doesn't say point out all the names that you would like to call them. It says point out the offense. Be able to explain your perspective, and typically that takes a little bit of thought beforehand. You need to create space for the emotional part of your brain to just lower the RPMs enough for the prefrontal cortex to begin thinking clearly again. And one of the ways to do this is to go, can I summarize what the real issue is in one sentence? It's like, hey, the other day when you did this, over the past few months, I have seen these three things, and from my perspective, this is so important because when we don't do this, we end up going into our conversation so emotionally charged that they end up looking like this. Let's watch.
What is your problem?
Have fun making terrible life decisions.
Oh, you just know everything, don't you? I'm actually so sick of you.
Just really disappointed in you.
You know, maybe I'll be more like you, Jess, and I'll go run into the kitchen and make pastries with sprinklers on them. Then throw some dumb pajama outfit on, and then tell other people how to live their life.
It's not a pajama outfit. They're called pajamas.
That's
Nick.
what I said.
Nick, why don't you go back in your room and put on your stupid flannel and keep not living up to your potential?
You're a crazy person,
I'm
Jess.
not. I'm just saying things that you don't want to hear.
You know what I would like to hear from you?
What?
Silence.
Well, I'm not gonna be silent.
Just shut up for 1 second.
I'm trying
be quiet.
to help
Please
you.
be quiet.
No.
I don't want your
No,
help.
stop making that face at me. I hate that face.
This is my only face. I don't have a lot of faces.
For some of you, that just got real, didn't it? It's like, yeah, that was like 20 minutes ago. That was great. No, it's okay. It happens to all of us. Let me ask you the question. What was the real issue? If you can't explain it before you go into the conversation, what'll happen is you'll just become a dump truck of all sorts of stuff that could potentially bury the other person. And you know what happens? They become a dump truck too. And this is why we create, some of our conversations create more drama than they solve. Go in with the real, be able to explain your perspective. And a key part of that, before you confront someone, is to be able to offer next steps. When we go into these conversations, if our thought is, and that's why you made me mad, and I don't like that, and I never want you to do that again. Sometimes we're hearing this for the first time on the other side, and it's like, well, great. What do you want me to do? I'm not that smart, and so if you could give me like 3 steps, I'll do my best. I don't want drama either. And so here's what you begin to, this is what has been so helpful when we heard this. It's to go, hey, next time, here's what I would prefer. Hey, in the future, here are 3 ways that I would have loved for this situation, this scenario to have played out. If you don't take time to offer next steps, then we're left guessing how to close the separation. But if you could help us, those of us who keep doing things against you, we may not be able to do all that you want, but if you could give us a few places to start, again, it closes the separation that drama creates. So now, after you've worked through that list, now you're able to have a real conversation. And imagine how some of your drama-filled conversations would go if you were to just take a little bit, and I'm not talking about a week, just take a few minutes, maybe talk it through with someone else. Just take time before you go into the conversation. I have a feeling that if we were to do this, big and small drama, we'd experience less in our life. And here's what I know. I know some of you are thinking, yeah, but Ben, you don't know who I have to talk. You don't know who I have to deal with. This will never work. Are you kidding me? I could do all of this work and that conversation will still be unsuccessful. Well, look at what Jesus says. He said this. He says, but if you are unsuccessful, it's like he was reading your mind. It's amazing. He says, take 1 or 2 others with you and go back so that everything you say may be confirmed by 1 or 2 witnesses. What's he saying? He's saying, get your posse, okay? Get your squad, all the people that are on your side of the argument. You come rolling in, guns a-blazing, to show them how they did all this. No. What you need to do is you need to find 1 or 2 people who care about the relationship, not just your perspective. It's easy to find people and put them on our side. But you know what? Somebody coached my wife and I, and I'm using my wife and I as a frame of reference that you can use in any environment. You got to have people in your life that care about your relationships together. And so what that means for my wife and I, practically, when we experience this, and this is true for my friendships, this is true at work, is when you have people that you have permission to call in the middle of heated fellowship and go, hey, can I get them involved? Because sometimes you get into this crazy cycle that doesn't seem to resolve anything. And when you bring 2 or 3 people into that conversation that care about closing the separation, suddenly they can look at me, they can look at her, they can look at us, they can be, it helps. And so who are the 2 or 3 other people that you need to lean into at times? Have you talked about that? Have you thought about that ahead of time? Because you're right. Sometimes talking to the other person doesn't seem to get the results that we want. And you know what? The truth is there are going to be times where you bring 2 or 3 others and it's going to be unsuccessful. Look at what Jesus says. If the person still refuses to listen, then take your case to the church, and then if he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. Now, that sounds like somebody's preaching. All of a sudden, it's like, yeah, put them on the outside. Treat them like they're garbage, pagan. That's not what this is about. Think about it. If Jesus is teaching this, if Jesus is the one that's teaching this, how did he treat people who didn't believe in him? Did he treat them like garbage? Did he treat them? How did he treat the corrupt tax collectors? He loved them. He cared about them, but he didn't give them the same access to his life that he did the disciples. And so sometimes there are people who just don't want the same kind of relationship that you want. And what that may mean is creating a little space. It's putting boundaries isn't what you do to keep people out of your life. Boundaries are the invitation. They're the guardrails that lead people towards deeper relationship with you. And if people aren't willing to live in the boundaries, that doesn't give you permission to hate them. It just means you don't continue to expect from them what they're not willing to give. Just the other day, I'm not kidding, this past week, my wife looked at me and she said, hey, Ben, I need to set an appointment. I share this with you because it happens in our life. I get into drama with my kids, with our coworkers, and with my wife. And she looked at me and she said, we need to set an appointment. And I knew right away that we were going to have to set aside some space with some, distraction-free. And I'm the kind of guy that wants to deal with this thing and get it over with quick. And so I went into the conversation, and my wife, Lauren, was so amazing. I'm not saying it wasn't without emotion. She brought emotion to it, but she shared with me her perspective of how over the past couple of months she's noticed some things in my life that she wanted to treat as a little deal, but they were becoming a bigger deal for her. And so she shared with me, and she presented options. She's like, hey, here's what I would like, because I know you don't always see and live life, and your strengths are different than mine, but here's what I would like moving forward. Option A, option B, option C. Would you think about it? Man, I so appreciate it. Was the conversation fun? No, we weren't shooting confetti guns off in the middle of the conversation, okay? But man, I am so thankful to be able to step into those kinds of conversations and begin to see what could have been a big gap begin to close because I care about her. And so I think we need to do the same thing. Man, it brings life. It strengthens a relationship. And so now that you know how to go confront people, take the list and go start confronting the people that you care about, okay? You know what that means? That means, like me, and some of you are better at this than others, or better at this than me, but that means sometimes you're going to be the other person. And within this same passage, there are some practical things that help us when we are being confronted. Look at what Jesus said. Jesus said, if you're the other person, listen, confess, so that you win that person back. There's some principles here that even though Jesus was teaching us how to confront other people, there's some things that we need to pay attention to. So when you're confronted, you know where we need to begin with the real win. That's where we need to start. We need to begin with the real win in our life. What's the real win? Getting defensive, proving my point, sharing with them how they are wrong. No, the real win is when we are confronted, even though it doesn't feel this way. Sometimes it feels like they're against us. The real win is to close the separation. And so what we need to do, and this language was really helpful for me, is we need to prepare with Teflon. When my wife says we need to set an appointment, I didn't pick this language, it was given to me, but mentally, the image that was given to me is you just need to spray Teflon all over your body. It's like you're all over your heart, that non-stick substance that makes cooking eggs in the morning so much easier because it doesn't stick to everything, right? And so that's what we need to do when we are being told, hey, I need to set an appointment. I need to have a conversation with you. My job isn't to keep score and to come in guns loaded. It's to put on the non-stick substance so that I'm ready to what? Understand their perspective. I need to be able to understand their perspective, not get them to understand my perspective and my rationale. My job is to listen. And so I got to put on Teflon so that I don't start getting defensive. And our job when we are being confronted is to say back what we think they are saying is the real issue. So you're not saying that you don't even, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's saying, hey, what I hear you saying is the other day when I did this, it caused you to feel this way. Am I hearing you correctly? And here's the prayer. I think God needs to be a part of this. Here's a passage that becomes a prayer for me. James, it says, understand this, my brothers and sisters. You must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Quick, slow, slow. Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Just make that your prayer. God, make me quick, slow, slow. Quick, slow, slow. Why? Because human anger doesn't produce the righteousness, the life, the connection that God desires. Our anger and our defensiveness creates more separation. It doesn't bring us back together. So we need to be quick, slow, slow in order to understand their perspective so that ultimately we can respond to their offer. So that we can say, yeah, I think I can do A. I'm not sure about B right now. Or let me think about it and get back to you in 24 hours. You know what? Thank you for bringing this to me. Take time. And then respond to their offer. And here's the grid that's so helpful. If guilt, hurt, and shame are the primary root causes of drama in our life, well then, if you're guilty, confess. You're right, I did that wrong. You are right. Not, well, if I did that wrong, you did this wrong, and you did this wrong, and you did this wrong, and you should, no, just confess, own it. Our world would be a better place if people started owning their stuff. You know where that begins now? Now that you know it? Let's go first. I think the church should be the place that inspires the world. We should have permission in front of the world to own our stuff. Why? Because we know that God has set us free from this burden of guilt. And so because we are eternally free with Him, we can look at people and go, you know what? I'm going to own my stuff, and I blew it there. You're right. I'm sorry. When it's hurt, do you know what our response is? It's compassion. Wow. I see that could cause a lot of anxiety, frustration, anger. I now understand your perspective and how that could hurt so much. I can't believe you've been carrying that for all of these days, weeks, months, years. It's where we bring empathy to the situation, and sometimes you need to do both. And when you start to hear the voice of shame, when sometimes you get confronted with things that have nothing to do with you, because that does happen. You know what? Our response is to go, that has nothing to do with me. Instead, it's to go, man, how can I encourage you? How can I encourage you? I don't want this separation to continue in our relationship. How can I help? What role can I play? How can you begin to speak back to people who God says that they are? That is so powerful. And here's why. Our memory verse says that we are to look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. That our job is to help each other with the drama that we face. Why? So that our hearts can be free to live in God's grace. A place of hope and forgiveness and freedom. And so what do we need to do? We need to watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up. No root of issue, drama, separation grows up, is left undealt with, troubling you, corrupting many. Imagine with me just for a minute what could happen in our country, in our community, in our schools, in our marriages, in our families, if we could begin navigating this drama a little differently. Will it solve every issue? No, because it always takes two people who want to come back together through the drama, and sometimes the other person doesn't. When those cases come, what's interesting is a few verses later, Peter says this. Peter said, well then, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? And Jesus said, no, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Think with me just for a minute. How did Jesus navigate the drama between God and us? The separation that sin caused, where we can't see and understand, we can't live up to God's holy, perfect standard. Jesus decided to come into the world. He came to the world to have what? A real conversation about the real issue that was separating us from God. And he didn't come like, shame on you, can you believe how sinful you are? No, he came into the world to point out the real issue, but to save us from it. He literally took upon himself the sin, the separation, the guilt, the hurt, the shame, and it killed him on the cross. He did that. Why? Because when he came back from the dead, he gives us an opportunity to experience new life, eternal life with who? Our Heavenly Father. He closed the gap. That is why we place our faith in Jesus. And if Jesus dealt with our eternal drama that way, those of us who call ourselves Jesus followers, let's mark today on the calendar as navigating the drama, the simple drama in our everyday life the same way. Having real conversations about the real issues and learning how to forgive each other through that. Because I think as we do that, the world will take notice and it could change everything. And so will you make that your prayer with me today, right now? God, thank you for the way that you handled and navigated the drama with us. Thank you that you didn't just leave us separated from you forever, but instead you stepped into it to have a real conversation about the real issue. And not only that, you took it upon yourself to close the gap for us, doing what we can't do. And so God, help us to continue to follow you in that way, in the way that we navigate the drama with the people, the marriages, the families, the kids, the classmates, the workplace, our neighbors, our friends. God, would you give us the courage before we have the conversation to get clarity on what the real issue is? And when we are confronted, would you help us be quick, slow, so that we can restore relationship the way that you intended? So God, I know there are marriages that are hurting today. God, I know there are family relationships that are drama-filled today. God, I know there are workplace relationships that are filled. I know there are friends, there are neighbors. And so, God, would you just remind us that your Spirit lives in us, giving us the courage and strength to just take a step. And so, God, would you help us take a step wherever we need to? Give us the courage to do that this week. And teach us how to navigate this conflict in a way that isn't ultimately just about us, but it honors you and your grace. We pray all of this in the amazing, grace-filled name of Jesus. And everyone said, amen. Thanks so much.